Well, good day to you. I know I'm running a little bit late on this Daily Devo, but welcome to the Daily Devo. This is Pastor Stephen. So thankful today to have you along for this journey. 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 9 is where I want to begin to read today. I want you to look at it with me. But he said to me, "My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore I will boast all the more gladly about my weakness, so that Christ's power may rest on me." One of the things that I want you to remember as we go through this crisis, as we move through this week, is that Paul pleaded for his thorn to be removed. Not once, but twice, but 3 times. And yet, even though he prayed 3 different times for this thorn to be removed, it was not. Paul prayed, he desired for this thorn of the flesh to be taken away. Anyone out there ever had a thorn in your flesh? Of course we have. We're human, right? Pastor, come on, give me. But as I pondered Paul's writing again in this context, I was thinking about this COVID-19 crisis, and I was reflecting upon the pleas that I have prayed. I was reflecting upon the cries of others that I have heard or have read. I was listening to the prayers this week of my young children, asking God to be merciful to those that they love. My little son Eli and Isaiah, they've been praying for God to take away the suffering from those who are ill, for God to protect Mama and Daddy from this virus. But here's something rather important that I was thinking about this week. God's grace is both present in our past and in our today, and His grace is promised for our future. Paul said to Titus that the grace that brings salvation has appeared to all men, and that's in the past tense. But then Paul makes this remarkable statement to Titus. He says God's grace is teaching us right here, right now, in this present age. What does God's grace teach us? It teaches us how we should live. Paul said it teaches us to say no to ungodliness, but it also teaches us to say yes to a godly life. And so here's the good news today. God's grace meets us right where we are every step of the way, every step of our lives, in every moment that we're depressed, in every moment that we're confused, in every moment that we don't understand or we have all these questions. God meets us where we are. It's not just a past thing that we once were saved, but it's an active thing in our life today. The grace of God meets us regardless of our situation this morning, this afternoon, this evening. What I know is that God's consistent grace was a constant cry from the praying psalmist. Listen to the Psalms as I went through them, and I was looking for moments in the Psalms when the psalmist was praying to God. So in times of need, in Psalm 30 verse 10, the psalmist said, "Hear, O Lord, and be merciful to me. Be my helper." When the psalmist was weak in Psalm 87 verse 16, the psalmist said, "Turn to me and be gracious to me. Give your strength to your servant." When the psalmist needed healing, he prayed, "Oh God, be gracious. I am weak. Heal me, O Lord." Psalm 6:2. The psalmist faced an enemy and he went to God in prayer. He said, "Be gracious to me, my Lord, and see my affliction from those who hate me. Spare my life." Psalm 9:13. When the psalmist was lonely, he knew who to turn to. He turned to God. "Turn to me and be gracious to me, for I am lonely and I'm afflicted." Psalm 25:16. And in this crisis that we face and in this day in which we live, I know that there are a lot of lonely people out there, and it's nice to know that we can turn to God. We also are facing grief. Some of us are losing loved ones. Some of us are facing heartache and heartbreak. And when the psalmist was grief over his life and his mind and his emotions, the psalmist went to God and prayed, "Oh, be gracious to me, O Lord, for I am in distress. My eye is wasted from grief." Psalm 31:9. And whenever the psalmist was convicted of sin, he again turned to the Lord in prayer. "Oh Lord, be gracious to me. My eye has O Lord, be gracious to me. Heal me, for I have sinned against you." Psalm 41:4. And whenever evil was present in the world and they felt the burden of the evil and a burden for others to be saved, the psalmist prayed, "God, be gracious to us and bless us, that your way may be known upon the earth." Psalm 67:1 and 2. You know, it's really hard to deny that whatever state Paul was in, he found a blessing in contentment. He knew what it was like to be rich. He knew what it was like to be poor. He knew what it was like to have what he needed. He knew what it was like to want. And yet he said, God's grace is sufficient in our weakness. Listen to what Paul also said. That is why, for Christ's sake, I delight in weakness. That's in verse 10 of chapter 12. I delight in my weakness, in my insults, in hardships, in persecutions, in difficulties. For when I am weak, then I am made strong. And so Paul goes on to remind us that in Christ, it is the strength of Christ that meets us in our greatest weakness and in our greatest hour of need. And I also want to encourage you to link that need with prayer, because there's a great link in prayer and the soul of the saint and the promise of God. If our Christian life was meant to be sustained by prayer, then this Christian life was also meant to be sustained by faith, grace, and love, which is given to us every day through the power of Christ. So regardless of your circumstance today, let's go to God in prayer. Let's trust His sufficient grace in our most difficult time and our most time of need. And I pray that the comfort that has been given to Paul, the comfort that has been given to the psalmist, and the comfort that has been given to so many others might be afforded to you. God bless, and we'll see you tomorrow right here on the Daily Devo.